Week. You know what? We've had my wonderful in-laws staying with us for the last 11 nights. Woo, and they've been in the UK for a bit longer, and it's just been such a very, very special time. So the week's been good. And now I'm preaching. Right, okay, so A Beautiful Life. So we've been going through this series for those who have been here for the last few weeks. A Beautiful Life is a series that we're working through, which we've been going through the Beatitudes. So I'm going to be focusing on Matthew 5, verse 7 today, which is a small part of the Beatitudes. And the Beatitudes is a small part of a bigger sermon, otherwise known as Sermon on the Mount. So Matthew 5 to 7, those chapters, is the Sermon on the Mount. And this is an incredible part of Jesus' teaching. It's kind of like the cornerstone of his teaching. It's this massive section. And he goes through like some pretty noticeable verses, some pretty heavy hitters, ones most of us would have heard of, starting obviously with the Beatitudes. He then goes into being salt and light in the earth, dealing with anger, dealing with lust, loving your enemies, giving to the needy. He teaches out prayer. I'm pretty sure we all know the Lord's Prayer. Revenge, fasting, worry, money, judging others. Do not judge, for you too will be judged. You know, the one about the log in your eye. Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you'll find. Building your house on a rock, building your strong foundation. It's a massive, massive section of Jesus' teaching. We know so much of it. If you're struggling with anything, you can pretty much just go there. But the entire sermon, the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus starts by outlining these Beatitudes, these beautiful attitudes that can be considered like a foundation for living an authentic Christ-following life. And it's not some rule book, it's not some manifesto on what to do in order to get to heaven one day when you die. He's talking about how to live a blessed life today, to both his audience back then, who he was preaching to, but also to us. So, we're going to read the Beatitudes again. I know, if you've been here for the last few weeks, we've gone through this a few times, but it's fine. We will learn the Bible. Matthew 5, 1 to 13. Now when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on the mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him and he began to teach. He said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven, for in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you." So Matthew 5, verse 7, that's what I'm going to focus on today, which is, "Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy." I wasn't really sure what I was going to talk about when Phil asked me to speak on this verse. So I thought, and a little bit like what EJ did the other week, I thought, let's dig a little deeper into the words that are used in this very small passage. Let's look at the language used and maybe put some imagery around how to capture the imagination of how this verse should be understood, how it applied back to the original audience, and maybe how it should work for us today. And this is something that I really love doing. And I was talking to Brian earlier about how when I'm preparing a message, I get so distracted because I'm like, oh, what did it mean in Greek? What did it mean in Hebrew? And what about this translation? And it takes me a very long time to get my thoughts straight. But language and interpretation of which, it does change over time, and there's dialects and there's translations. A speaker that I really like, he said, words are like a container ship through time, and they kind of bring these imaginations as they go through, right? Which is why I love looking into this sort of thing. And then not to mention, there's a Christian jargon, if you will, that we use. And sometimes we use these words so often that they can kind of lose their meaning or their power just because we hear them a lot. So, blessed are the merciful. What do we mean when we say blessed? Like EJ mentioned the other week, Aramaic would have been the language that Jesus was most likely used during giving the Sermon on the Mount. And in Aramaic, blessed is to weihon, Sure. Which means enriched, happy, delighted, content, and blissful. I don't know about you, but when I hear blessed, I don't necessarily think content or blissful. Sometimes we can fall into this trap of imagining God as this powerful wizard in the sky who's there to just answer our prayers, give us what we need when we ask for it. But being blessed by God, it doesn't mean to be rich or successful or powerful or to get the things that you want. That can come from it. But it's not what it means to be content or blissful. In the Passion Translation, the Beatitudes are changed ever so slightly. It gives a bit more colour to the verse, and the word blessed is replaced. So instead of blessed is there, it says, what happiness comes to you when, or what delight comes to you, how enriched you are, what bliss you experience. It's quite a different imagination from what I was originally thinking. See, it's not about living a certain way in order to get the blessings. It's about living a better way, and that is the blessing. It's a very different imagination of that verse. So when we look at this section of this sermon against the backdrop of Jesus' original audience, this is an extremely oppressed ancient Jewish people. And he's preaching this new way of living to them. So in Jesus' day, they lived in Roman oppression as well as religious oppression. And they believed that their prophesied Messiah was going to come and free them of that. The word Messiah in Hebrew means anointed one, meaning the anointed one by God to be a king, referring to the ancient prophecies of a king to come from David's line and deliver them from their oppressors. So they had this imagination that their Messiah would be this warrior king who would free them through might and power and military prowess. But the Beatitudes are clearly not that. Meek, poor of spirit, merciful, all these things, that is not the way of thinking at that time. They were used to the Romans ruling with might and power, terror and slavery. And any history book will tell you that. Give some examples. Prior to Jesus' arrival, you had the Roman Republic. This was the days of Julius Caesar. And in 73 BC, you had Spartacus. Most of us will have heard this name. Yes, there's a movie. And he was a Roman slave. And he built up this army of slaves, and they revolted against the Roman Republic. However, General Crassus, I think that's how you say, and Pompey, they defeated them and then crucified 6,000 of the remaining slaves along the Appian Way, and they did not allow the bodies to be taken down, sending a message of what it meant to stand against Roman rule. General Pompey then later went on to take over Jerusalem, and that included lots of horrific things. When Jesus was born, Caesar Augustus ruled. This was during the Republic had now become an empire. Augustus was the first emperor, and here's the reason why there was a census. If you know the birth of Jesus story, there was a census. That's because he wanted to know how many people part of his empire in order to tax them. Not unsimilar to today. It's true. And under the rule of Augustus, there was a General Varus, and he was appointed the Syrian governor, known for his harshness and high taxation. During this time, there were a number of messianic uprisings. The Jewish people wanted their Messiah, and Jesus wasn't the only one. There were others. People claiming that they had been anointed by God to expel the oppressors and establish the kingdom. And so General Varus was sent to address this, and he crucified 2,000 of the rebels. This is the backdrop of Jesus' message. And he's drawing crowds of thousands, telling them to be merciful. So when we think of the word mercy or merciful, what do we think? I have a few definitions. I started with ChatGPT. It is 2023, guys. I was curious. Yeah, I had to give it a go. I am in marketing, yes. I thought it had a whole thing, but I'll read you the small part of it. Mercy is the multifaceted concept that encompasses compassion, kindness, forgiveness, and empathy, which is probably not pretty similar to what you were thinking. I then went to Google. And Compassion, the organisation, for those who don't know, a lot of us in here support children through Compassion. We do as a church. They're a wonderful organisation that are helping to feed children living in poverty and change their life and introduce them to Jesus. Wonderful organisation. They have fantastic SEO for mercy. They come up at the top. It is cool. And they say, mercy is the compassionate treatment of those in distress, especially when it is within one's power to punish or harm them. The word mercy is derived from the medieval Latin word merced or merces. I don't know if that's how you say it. It's how it's written. Which means price paid, which I love. Mercy in Greek is elios, which can be derived from a word that means olive oil. Interesting. Olive oil was used to treat wounds. It's soothing, comforting. It takes away the pain. In Hebrew, the word is hesed, which means steadfast love. There's a theologian, John Oswalt, I think he's American. He says that hesed is a completely undeserved kindness and generosity, which I love. So I'm kind of sitting with this, thinking this is all very nice, and there's other words there, love, compassion, forgiveness, they all kind of fit in. So and grace, and I wanted to kind of figure out difference between mercy and grace, because they're pretty intertwined, and I found this as well. Mercy is the act of withholding deserved punishment, while grace is the act of endowing unmerited favor. In his mercy, God does not give us the punishment we deserve, while in his grace, he gives us the gift we do not deserve. Mercy and grace are the two sides of a coin, and that coin is love. And we are called to love. So see, in the Bible, I looked, there's not really an outright definition for the term mercy, other than how God demonstrates this time and time again, how he uses broken people over and over again, those that don't deserve it. And I have examples. Abraham had no issue giving his wife to Pharaoh's harem, and I think it says, and he profited greatly. Moses was a premeditated murderer. Jonah literally ran away from his calling in order to not be part of God being merciful. Rahab was a prostitute. David takes the wife of one of his soldiers to bed and then arranges for his murder in order to marry her. David. Speaking of which, Psalms 145 verse 8, which is David writing, "The Lord is gracious and merciful, slow to anger, and abounding in steadfast love." We all know this verse. And this is this guy who's incredibly flawed. He understands God's grace and his mercy. Even where we're reading from Matthew, he was a tax collector, a publican, I believe they called them back then, which meant, you're probably thinking, what? No big deal, tax collector. He's a tax collector for the Roman Empire. So he's a Jewish person who's literally part of the oppressive system that's oppressing his people, and he's becoming rich off of it. There's quite a few verses that talk about, why is Jesus hanging out with the sinners and the tax collectors? They're bad. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. That second part of it, for they will be shown mercy. Now, you might be thinking, sure, this is nice. I get that. Be good. Good things happen. I haven't done anything bad lately. I don't really need mercy. I haven't murdered anyone lately. Ever. Kidding. Disclaimer, I have not murdered anyone. Ever. I get that. I do. So I'd like to put a little bit of a human narrative, part of my story, for what God's mercy means for me. Because sometimes, again, it can just feel like it's, it's nice Christian jargon, it's a nice story, great, I'll go be a good person. I'm incredibly lucky with my upbringing. I have 2 wonderful parents, flawed but wonderful, and they introduced me to Jesus from day one. So since before I could remember, I had this friend who happened to be the creator of everything. He loves me unconditionally. He's got dreams and plans for me that are beyond anything that I could ever hope for. I can do all things with my friend. There's no limit. He's a very real, very good friend, and I've had him since the day I was born. And then I become a teenager, and I start to think, oh, my friend, he's not really cool. He's not hanging out with the cool crowd. And so my friends ask me, they're like, hey, you know this Jesus guy, right? My response is like, yeah, we used to be close, but we're not really anymore. Like, he's a bit of a dog. Then I get a bit older, and people ask again, you know that Jesus character, right? I'm like, he's really more a friend of my parents. He's like a family friend. And then I get older, I get married, and I'm like, yeah, Jesus can be part of the wedding. He did introduce us. I guess he can be involved. My cousin's involved. He can be there. It's cool. But I think I only want to see him at family get-togethers. Like Christmas. That was me. And then I needed a job. He has connections. So I ask, he helps me out. And then we need a mortgage. Again, he knows some people. If we had been friends, you would have told him to drop that toxic friend. She only comes around when she wants something. It's true. See, my life was pretty good. I don't really have a sob story. There's been some lows, sure. But I've got a wonderful family, great friends, career, house, husband, dogs. Life was good and I didn't need God. And it wasn't like surface level good, like it was good. But something was missing. And deep down, I knew what it was, but I couldn't get over myself. Couldn't get over my pride, my unforgiveness, my shame, my selfishness. I couldn't. I didn't want to. It was too hard, even though knowing I had this friend that I just needed to let in that door. Can I have the band up, actually? That's all right. I'm going a little fast, but we're going to worship later. And then I thought, I need to get myself right first. I knew I had this problem. I knew what it was, but I thought, I need to get myself right. I need to do some things in order to earn it back. Actually, what I thought was Matt needed to get right first. It's true. I put it all on him, which is so bad. Talk about log in my eye. You see, that's not how mercy works. Hesed is a completely undeserved kindness and generosity. Again, there's a preacher that I love. He says this line almost every message, and I'm probably going to do it in almost every message because it's so good. Jesus treats people as they are worth, not what they deserve. Jesus treats people as they are worth, not what they deserve. I was a bad friend, really bad. And he was there the whole time. We're good friends now. But when I look back, even when I thought I had kept him at a distance, I was only seeing him at family gatherings, he was there the whole time. And in all my searching, he put the right people in the right place at the right time. completely undeserved kindness and generosity. The thing is, when Jesus was on this earth, he did that, treating people as they're worth, not what they deserve. He did that all the way up until he was crucified on the cross. And he did that even whilst he was being killed on the cross. He loved and forgave these people that were awful, because they deserved his mercy too. See, we all fall short. It may not be murder, it may not be adultery. How about your pride or your selfishness, greed? How about wasting the incredible gift of life that you have? Not using your talents, not listening to your calling. How do you treat others when you're stressed? We all need mercy, that undeserved kindness and generosity. So blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. It's a better way to live. It's not the blessing. It's not something you earn. The way you live is the blessing. It's a better way to live. It's not an easy way to live. Later on in the Sermon of the Mount, Jesus says in Matthew 7:13-14, "Enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it." It's easy way to live. "But small is the gate and narrow is the road that leads to life, and only a few find it." It's a better way for life. Because showing others mercy when they don't deserve it, it's not easy. It's hard. There's a cost. As many of you might know, my husband, Matthew, works for an organization called A21. So does Dan. And they're an incredible organization, and their sole purpose is to combat human trafficking and modern-day slavery. We recently saw this documentary in the space, and it was pretty heavy. And as you can imagine, within this documentary, there are victims and there are perpetrators. And watching this, my blood was boiling for the victims. I wanted justice. I was mad. Still pretty mad. But we're called to that as well. We're called to justice. Many in this room are especially called to justice. But the thing is, whilst I was watching this documentary, I went through a crazy array of emotions. But my heart also just really broke for the perpetrators. They had done these awful, undeserving of anything good things. And I was heartbroken. That's not the life God wanted for them. And it's hard to feel that too. The road is narrow. See, the thing is, if all I felt was that anger, it's too much. He knows that. That's why living in mercy and being merciful is better. Even if you are an oppressed nation. In Micah 6 verse 8, it says, "And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with God." Again, it's one of the verses we preach about a lot. Act justly. Justice is important, but you can't do that without also loving mercy and walk humbly with your God. Where the Roman Empire ruled through power and might and oppression, Jesus ruled through humility and servanthood, love and mercy, showing mercy when it was not deserved. It's a better way to live. This is what it means to have a blessed life. And this is the good news, that we get to do that. So I'm going to pray. I don't know if something caught you in the message, maybe something you're holding on to, some unforgiveness, some situation where you're struggling to to see the other person's point of view, to be merciful. Or maybe you're thinking, I don't live a life like that. I don't walk out into the world and love people. That's hard for me. I'm going to pray for all of us today. And if we're going to sing a song, and if you want prayer afterwards, myself, Brian, Phil, we'll be up here. We can pray with you. If you want something for a specific situation, we'd love to do that. But I pray for everyone anyway. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Lord, for the incredible example that you set for us of how to live. And whilst it may not be easy, it is better. You've given us the roadmap of how to live a better life today, not worrying about what happens when we die, but how we treat others today, how we love you and how we love others, how we see the world. Because you loved us first. And it's not about earning it. It's not about trying to be more deserving of your love, of your mercy, your grace. We've got that already. Because you treat us as we are worth and not we deserve, Father. So I pray for everyone in this room. Pray for whatever situation that they are going through, that they would see you, that you would be with them through the highs and the lows. They would know your presence. They would know your love. We thank you, Father, for that incredible generosity and kindness that you have bestowed upon us. Thank you, Father.